regards to this incident that happened. This incident happened on October 13th of 2024 at about 8:03 p.m. UHP, Utah Highway Patrol, began receiving reports of a male pedestrian on I-15 freeway, and UHP troopers Hancock and Gordon were dispatched to respond. For example, 911 callers had reported that a male was walking traffic on the side of the freeway. He was dancing around on the side of the freeway, jumping around in the middle of the freeway, coming in and out of traffic in the second lane of the freeway, walking out in the middle of the highway, running across the freeway, sitting on the median barrier, etc., etc. After searching the area at about 9:06 p.m., Trooper Gordon located the male, who was later identified as Anthony James Valdez, walking on I-15 northbound near 600 North. Trooper Gordon got out of his vehicle and began giving commands, but Mr. Valdez fled. Trooper Gordon pursued on foot, and Mr. Valdez crossed the northbound freeway. Trooper Gordon continued to track him until Trooper Hancock could flip around and get there. At approximately about 9:11 p.m., Trooper Hancock located Mr. Valdez on the right shoulder of the I-15 northbound freeway, and Mr. Valdez then fled up the steep, rocky embankment on the east. Trooper Hancock quickly exited his vehicle and began yelling commands as Mr. Valdez climbed to the top of the embankment to the 600 North off-ramp. Trooper Hancock pursued him onto the off-ramp, where he drew his taser and then pursued him across the off-ramp and northbound on the right shoulder of the off-ramp. Meanwhile, the UHP had already reached out to other agencies. Another officer, Salt Lake City Police Department, K-9 Officer Brown, responded and pursued behind Trooper Hancock. After running north, Mr. Valdez went over the off-ramp's right barrier wall. As Trooper Hancock approached, he yelled, "Get on the ground, taser, taser, taser," and deployed his taser at Mr. Valdez's back. As captured by the Trooper Hancock's body-worn camera, Trooper Hancock moved closer to the barrier wall. After deploying his taser, Mr. Valdez is seen sitting off the roadway, which is approximately 7 feet 3 inches from the barrier wall, before dropping off the roadway and disappearing from the camera's view. Trooper Hancock later explained, and let me just pause for a second there. As many of you know, it is the constitutional right of every officer to not want to speak to our investigations. I just want to commend Trooper Hancock's decision to speak with the investigative officers and sharing of the context of what happened. That helps us flesh out the factual scenario much more robustly. And the other thing I just want to note also, just as another observation, Trooper Hancock gave all of his statements without reviewing his body-worn camera, which is a very important thing from my perspective, because it allows us to really focus in on his impressions of what happened. Because after you watch a body-worn camera, there's always the possibility that you're making your statement with consistency of having observed that, but not always the case. But I just want to point those two things out about Trooper Hancock's cooperation with the investigators. Trooper Hancock later explained to the investigators, "I unholstered my taser and pointed at the subject. He started to hop across the concrete barrier on the right shoulder. And again, I waited to deploy my taser because him hopping, it would immobilize him, and I did not want to hurt the subject. So when I saw the subject stand," and this is, I'll bring it to show you as he jumps over the barrier, this is what he's referencing to. "I saw the subject stand and prepare to continue running. I then deployed my taser. The subject screamed and he disappeared. We had poor visibility in the dark about 9 p.m. The only light was coming from whatever overhead lights were from the freeway from traffic. The brightest light was actually coming from my taser light. So it looked like there was trees right beyond the subject right before I deployed my taser. Based on my familiarity with the area, I knew that the on-ramp to the opposite side had a gentle slope leading downward with grass, so I believed that it would be the same on that side. After Trooper Hancock deployed his taser, Officer Brown caught up, and Trooper Hancock advised that the suspect had dropped. Trooper Hancock then jumped over the barrier wall and looked over the edge, where he observed Mr. Valdez laying face down on the ground below, approximately 21 feet, 8 inches beneath the roadway, with his hands stuck underneath his body and not moving meanwhile. Officer Brown advised over the radio, taser deployed, start medical. He dropped off like a 15-foot drop, end quote, and began coordinating for additional units to respond to the area below. Eventually, officers located Mr. Valdez and observed that he had no pulse, placed him in handcuffs, turned him over, and began to provide emergency medical aid until emergency medical responders arrived. Mr. Valdez was ultimately declared deceased on the scene. Brent Davies, medical doctor with the Utah Office of Medical Examiner, performed an autopsy of Mr. Valdez's body and ultimately determined that Mr. Valdez died from blunt force injuries. In discussing his findings, Dr. Davies opined, quote, given the circumstance surrounding the death as currently known and the examinations of the findings, the cause of death is blunt force injuries. The manner of death is undetermined. End quote. Dr. Davies further reported he fell approximately 21 feet onto the ground below. Pertinent finding at examination were severe blunt force injuries to his torso of sufficient severity to cause death. Review of the body cam video demonstrates he appears to be preparing to push himself off the ledge when the taser is deployed. It is not clear at what point the barbs strike his body and what role the device might have had in his death. Dr. Davies reported his examination findings of 2 taser barbs embedded in the skin of Mr. Valdez's back, right upper back and lower mid-back. Additionally, Dr. Davies reported that post-mortem toxicology blood was positive for methamphetamine and amphetamine. During the investigation, the protocol investigators determined that based on information provided by the Axon taser, the taser probes spread approximately 18 inches, the distance between the Trooper Hancock and Mr. Valdez at the time of the impact, thus was approximately 10 to 10.5 feet. At this time, I'm going to just share with you what we do have in terms of the video, and then I'll come back to that. The context that I want you to understand is this is at nighttime. This is on I-15. There have been multiple individuals who have called in concerned about a person in different capacity at different locations on I-15 who is on the freeway, engaged in different kinds of behavior. The initial contact reveals no contact with him, but eventually, as they come back, the first person to contact him is Trooper Gordon. We'll show that video. The second person to contact him is Officer Hancock, who deployed the taser and the context that in which that occurred. And then, of course, there's Officer Brown, who, although was not actively involved, was nonetheless there. We'll also have video from the dash cam to give you a full context as we try to reconstruct what happened. Keith, let's go to this first video. The first is actually an orientation shot. So what this is that this is the freeway off ramp that you've got. The video will be able to show, this is going to be at nighttime. The subject will move across this way, the trooper will move across, and they go down, and these trees will be visible also. And this thing right here is a concrete barrier that is right next to the freeway. So that gives you kind of an orientation of it. The first video that we will show, Keith, go to the next one. Okay, so this is Trooper Gordon's body cam. Now he's the person, the calls have gone out, they're trying to locate, but the subject keeps moving over multiple different locations. over an extended period of time. Now, during the statements that were given to us by Trooper Hancock, he indicates to us that this was really odd because their experience usually is when calls for services come to the troopers, within 5 minutes they're going to find out. There's a car on the side, somebody's been abandoned, they get very quickly. Or the person has left. So by the time we get to an incident, the driver has already gone, so we don't see them. What gave him concern was this was over a 40, 50-minute period, over an extended period of time, and there were multiple sightings of this person, and of course they were very heightened. They wanted to get to this exigency because they were concerned that he was going to get hurt or somebody else on the freeway was going to get hurt or cause a collateral accident. So Trooper Gordon's body cam, go ahead and play that.
Hey, stop right there.
He runs from him. You can see the traffic.
So like 613, he's running from me on foot, southbound and northbound, emergency lane.
Right there, still running. And you can see the flow of traffic. There's traffic everywhere going.
Hey, come here. I just want to talk.
And this, so right there.
613, underneath the 600 north structure. He ran over the right side of traffic. I'm not going to be following him.
He's already crossed over multiple lanes, which has been the call all night. You see him again, he lights him up.
White male, white t-shirt, blue jeans.
So Gordon is communicating this over dispatch. Hancock is getting that information. So we speed it up a little bit here. He keeps an eye on him. He's non-responding. And Hancock is now aware of it. And you'll see a car that'll come up here.
My flashlight, you should be able to see him pretty easy.
He's starting to climb over. And this is Hancock's
He's headed up on
right
the
there.
frame.
And that's Hancock right there. So you can see what this showed us again, the exigency that was created there. It also showed the non-responsiveness from Mr. Valdez. It also indicated that other officers who were there trying to respond to it. And you see Hancock's vehicle come down. And you can see from the perspective of Gordon's body cam, the subject has jumped the barriers again over to the rocks. He's going on to other ongoing traffic here, and Hancock is giving pursuit from over this side. So the next video that was available to us was Trooper Hancock's dash cam, separate from his body cam. So this is important. You can see as the initial approach. Keep in mind that Gordon has already moved, has been calling this in. This is Hancock's response from the dash cam perspective. This is the other on ramp, off ramp. You can start to see, you'll see the subject right in this area, right there. He's now jumping. The other troopers over here. Now this was important because Hancock had seen this on this side over here, and he's starting to formulate what's going through his mind as he shares that in an extensive interview with us. As I mentioned, Gordon was here, so this was the perspective from the dash cam. So then we moved next to the body cam that was available to us from Officer Hancock, who utilized the trailer. So you've seen the car come up. Now this is from his perspective. The only caution that I always do with body cams is, What the body cam sees isn't always what the officer sees. It depends on the location of the body cam. It gives us insight from an investigative perspective, from orientation. But my head, if the body cam is here, my head can swivel so I can see a lot of different things, but it does lend us good perspective. Go ahead and run that, Keith.
Please, do not move! Do not move! Salt Lake 637 is on the off-ramp.
Again, ongoing traffic on this again.
Do not move!
He's crossing over. You can see multiple cars going by. The officer.
You're gonna get tased!
He jumps,
Get off the road! Taser, taser, taser!
and Brown is right there and responding.
Oh, shit. He dropped a long ways. He's down. I'm keeping an eye on him. He's not moving. I'm good for it. Holy crap.
They're bringing in, trying to give direction, trying to get
He's
medical.
not moving. Sir, call out! Sir, call out!
Okay, so this was really important for us, and a couple of things to keep in mind. The body-worn camera that's the trooper has is like a fisheye, so it makes it look like the people are further away than they actually are. They're a little bit much more closer, and it became important for us because in his interview, Trooper Hancock says multiple things to us. He goes, look, I'm concerned about the safety for this guy. I'm concerned about the safety of what's going on. He's being non-responsive. We're trying to find who he is. Gordon's already communicated to me that he's got eyes on him, and then I get eyes on him. He's running up the thing. He goes, I'm already starting to say that I'm going to have to use my taser because he's being non-compliant, and I have to do it in a safe place because I'm worried about the subject's safety. He wants to make sure that he doesn't deploy his taser sooner because he's worried even on the roadside that the subject may go into the traffic. He's worried about negotiating his own space, and as he's watching all of that. And even, although it, like I said, looks a little bit further in the body-worn camera, it's much more closer. And he even makes the observation and statement that this cement barrier that's there, that he thought he was on the side of the road, but as he's jumping up, he didn't want to do the taser on him there because he didn't want to have the subject be injured on the barrier. And it becomes important in his perception because when he jumps over the barrier, in the perception of Trooper Hancock, he says that I see him take basically steps like he's up and running, and he's already made the decision at that point to fire the taser because he goes, now he's on the other side of the barrier, and he believes that just like on the other side where there's a gentle slope of the grass, that on this side of the barrier that there's a gentle slope. So when he sees him take those steps, which he perceives as running, he goes, I'm going to fire the taser because if he falls, he's only going to fall a couple of feet and I can take him into custody. So that was really important to give us his mens rea, or his mental state of what was going through the trooper's mind, which, like I've said before, we don't often get to hear in the kind of detail that he gave to us. And that really helped us contextualize this with the other objective evidence that we had. So what we did now is we slowed this down, body worn, so you can see that in the rush you sometimes miss stuff, but this was slowed down. The important thing is he's already pulled the taser out. He's going hands-on, so that shows you the proximity of it. And he's got the laser there. He sees him taking steps. So he is responding to that, and he's fired. And you can see how close Brown was right behind him. Now, Keith, I'm going to have you take that back one more time for me. Again, let me just contextualize. The fisheye makes it look further. The important thing to notice for us was that while he's running with the taser, the fact that he's bringing the taser up, that he's trying to actually take aim. And when both hands go on, he is at close enough. Because remember, you can't fire a taser too far away. So both practically and conceptually, he has to feel that they're close enough where the taser will actually have an impact. So that was really important for us to sort of observe in that. And that also is consistent because he's able to acquire the subject and he's taking the aim, but he says he's making a very mental decision to not tase him while he's in the process of jumping over the barrier because he doesn't want him to get hurt. So when he jumps over the barrier, he says, now I see him standing up, running with the motion that he sees, and he's thinking he's going to jump off to a lower ledge over there, and he makes the decision to fire the taser because at that point, and that's really important, and this slowed down video kind of helps us contextualize all of that information to sort of assess what happened. Go ahead and play it. So he's right there, he's on target, he's already gone. So he sees him take those steps. So now he perceives him as running, and he's firing, he made the decision to fire, and he fires the taser. And this happens so quickly in that context. Let me see here. Oh. Okay, so go to the next one. Again, this was important for us when we were going through the normal view of the body cam. Because as we got the statement and the statement from the trooper saying, I knew that I had to use a taser rather than any other kind of force, you can see because he actually is made that decision as he's jumping up because he's already pulling the taser out. And that was really important and consistent with this, the debrief that he did and the interview that he gave to us. And that decision to pull the taser out is really important because he's now telling us what he assesses the situation to be. And that allowed us to give a collaborative consistency with him. Again, the fisheye makes it look a lot further, but there's Mr. Valdez right there. And that was important for us to, again, look at all the pieces of evidence that we could find that to help us with that. Let me see here. And then the next one was the other, for completeness, Officer Brown, right? Go to the next one. Did we? What did we do? Okay, all right. All right, so after we had this information, again, as I mentioned to you, a couple of things. The ME's finding, again, as I want to just go back for emphasis, ME report that he said, Dr. Davis further stated, he fell approximately 21 feet onto the ground below. Pertinent findings at the examination were severe blunt force injury to his torso of sufficient severity to cause death. A review of body cam video demonstrated that he appears to be preparing to push himself off the ledge when the taser is deployed. That's what the ME is seeing. For us, it was somewhere between that ledge and as the subject is running, because the decision and reaction is already occurring because he's already made the decision to fire. And he's firing, he's committed himself to firing that as soon as he's jumped over the barrier as he's continuing to acquire the subject. And it is important for us that, and to further, it is not clear at which point the barbs strike his body and what role the device might have had in his death. And that's an important thing for us to have from the finding from the ME. The other thing that was really important was for us, as we went through this, that while we do not believe that the evidence supports the finding that Trooper Hancock intended for Mr. Valdez to die, because through he goes, look, I'm really want him to be safe, but I'm trying to do it as the best way that I can. Mr. Valdez fell 21 feet and died after Trooper Hancock deployed his taser. And so it is a proper thing for us to look at, because the OICI protocol allows us to look at any kind of death or force that's used from that. And so Hancock deployed his taser at him while he was sitting on the edge, elevated off the roadway ramp. Additionally, while we were not able to determine precisely when the taser barbs impacted Mr. Valdez in relation to when he left the ledge, we know that the taser deployment was successful, as the medical examiner found 2 taser barbs embedded in the skin of Mr. Valdez's back, and that 18 inches apart. And from that, we could extrapolate that he had to be close to between 10 to 10 and a half feet of the person. So 10 to 10 and a half feet when he fired the taser. So in this case, we were unable to determine whether and to what extent, if any, the taser deployment caused Mr. Valdez to fall from the ledge. We could also not rule out that the taser deployment did not cause or contribute to Mr. Valdez's death. In other words, we were unable to determine, based on the body-worn camera recordings as well as other evidence in the case, whether Mr. Valdez's fall was voluntary, that is, he jumped or pushed himself, or involuntary as a result of being tasered. Notably, the medical examiner determined that Mr. Valdez died of blunt force injuries. He was similarly unable to determine the manner of death in discussing his findings. And so he further went on to say, it is not clear at what point the barb strikes his body and what role the device might have had in his death. But nonetheless, once we reviewed this and went through everything that he had, our conclusion then is that when we evaluated all these facts and applied the law, Trooper Hancock explained his decision to use force to investigators. For example, Trooper Hancock explained that he believed that he needed a taser when he saw Mr. Valdez running from him and heading again into traffic area, and that it was a question of when and knowing when was the safe spot to do that. Trooper Hancock explained further that he did not use his tasers when Mr. Valdez was on a rocky embankment because, quote, it would immobilize him and cause him to fall down the hill. Running across the off-ramp, because he didn't want to, again, use his taser then, because if he immobilized, he might get struck by a car. Or hopping across the concrete barrier on the right shoulder because of the potential injury from a heightened position, as it would immobilize him, and I didn't want to hurt him. Trooper Hancock explained, quote, when I saw the subject stand, that what he's saying is when he jumped over the barrier and sees him standing, prepared to continue running, I then deployed my taser. Trooper Hancock explained that when he did so, they had poor visibility in the dark and looked like there were trees right beyond the subject, and he believed there would be a gentle slope leading downward with grass like the one on the ramp on the opposite side. So when we take all of this information in there, what we have, when we looked at the filing of charges, we declined to file those charges, and as I explained to the family this morning, this is just a terrible tragedy that happened here. Everybody was trying to do whatever they could to try to contact Mr. Valdez, tried to bring him into a zone of safety. And as we looked at the totality of the evidence, our conclusion is that we would decline to file any kind of criminal charges. This was a little bit different and unique for us because most of our reviews are often with the use of weapons, like a use of a gun, but in this, the use of the taser in the context posed a really interesting challenge for that. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Yes.
What was the response? You said that you spoke with the family, or how are they coping? What did they say about this?
Yeah, no, I want to be respectful to them. You know, when I meet with families, my job is to share with them in completeness the totality of the information that we have and our conclusions. Of course, they're distraught. Of course, and you've heard me say this before, regardless of the context in which we often find ourselves analytically, the person, the subject, is often somebody's child, somebody's uncle, somebody's father, somebody's brother here. And of course, they're distraught, they're devastated, and they're trying to process their grief through this process. You know, and they don't have to agree with our conclusion, but I also explained to them what my burden of proof is, what the context is, and at the end of which was a very painful meeting for them, but they, I think, understood from the perspective of what we were sharing with them how quick, exigent, dynamic situation this was, and based on what we were told and what we had access to, what was going through the trooper's mind when he decided to use that force. So it's a very, you know, painful moment for them right now.
So in summary, you can't tell if he was about to jump and got tased or if the taser caused him to fall.
That's right.
But the taser was effective, right?
Yes.
So at the very worst, was he incapacitated when he was falling?
Yeah, so that absolutely, right? You're right on, you're spot on, because what I can get to the point is in the thinking of the trooper, a couple of things I said. He's bringing the taser up because he's acquiring the subject. And like I said, the distance is actually very compressed. So he has him in there, but he is also saying, I'm making a conscious decision not to fire because I'm worried about the barrier that he's jumping over, because I don't want him to get hurt. And it's dark, and he had in his perception that there's a slope on the other side, because when he sees him jump the barrier and starts moving, he's already made the decision. He goes, now I can fire. I feel like I can fire because if he does fall, it's going to be a grassy little slope and I can take him into custody, right? And so he's made that decision. And as quick as we try to capture it, it is right that space. You actually see the subject go over, take a couple of steps. It's consistent with the perception that the trooper is telling me. And he is seeing him move like he's running. He's making that fire. And he goes, look, we were trained that the mass is back. So I had acquired him. I made the decision to fire. And this is what was going through my mind. And what you see is the subject actually stepping down and sitting, like he's lowering himself down there. And at that point, just like the ME and like we know it's going to have an impact. We know it made a contact. So was he already in the process of jumping off, or as he was lowering himself on it, or did that compel him to that happen? So that was the context that we were left in. I think it can go either way. But for us, the more important question was, can I criminally charge him for something here? What is the criminal wrongdoing that I could charge? Because nonetheless, for the sake of argument, let's say everything is there, he's made the contact, he's decided to use, like he's saying, at that point, was that an unreasonable place for him to do that, given everything that he's shared with us through that interview, all the stuff that's going through his mind, that why he's making the decision to fire. And our collective conclusion was, no, he did everything he thought he could do. He was mistaken in that, but he explained why he thought there was a slope on it. And that's an issue for something else, but not for a purpose of criminal charging.
He sounded genuinely surprised when he looked over the edge.
Yes. Well, that was important. And you observed the same thing. So when he goes over and he sees, you see the expletive that comes out of his mouth. That gives me insight to what his perception was. What he believed and what he now witnessed, his emotions are right there. And then when he debriefed with the investigators, he gave us as thorough of a context to that he could. And that's really important, that we don't always get that. I have to speculate on that sometimes in a reasonable inferences. So when I look at that and then look at the objective evidence, the context, there's nothing I can charge him with or would charge him with because I think he did what he needed to do in the context that he found himself in. And it is a tragedy to what happened, but I know why he did what he did at the time that he did. Yes?
Did the family give any insight into why Mr. Valdez was there in the first place? Was he in distress?
You know, my take of it is, I did not ask him that purposely, because I'm not, there's nothing that they could have shared. Their concern and grief was there. So I wanted to share information with them about the decision that I had made and what I had observed. And I don't want to speculate to anything there, but what I did share with them, there were some concerns, right? Because like every family member, or whether it's them here or anything, right? Were there other alternatives available? Could they have done something else? And the conversation that we did have, and as I shared, is that the thing that was driving all of this was the exigency, and it goes back to a statement that Trooper Hancock made to us before, which is, hey, whenever we get calls, it happens. We can see we usually make contact within 5 minutes. We make contact with who's maybe the subject of that call, or they're gone because somebody sees somebody pull over, somebody's calling 911, and by the time you get there, that driver's already gone. What concerned them was this was an extended period of time, multiple calls that were coming in a geographic location which they couldn't figure out where it was, and this person kept coming back to it. So they had a heightened sense of exigency. They were concerned, regardless of why he was there, it didn't matter, he was in harm's way. And there were other people who also could have been collaterally harmed by them. So that was the exigency that was driving them. And that's what you see with Gordon. Gordon comes up. What he just wants to do is to stop and be there, come to him so they can get to him. But he's running across oncoming traffic. He's moving through that process. And that is what's driving this thing. So we had those kind of conversations about it, and it was just the exigency, and that was the compelling part of it. And I really appreciate Trooper Hancock's sharing, and as I said, to me, if I'm being absolutely honest, to me it was very compelling because he did not watch his video. He shared with us his impressions, his memory of why he did what he did. And that was really important because I got, from my perspective, I got the most honest. I don't expect, when you're giving me that, to match everything up, but it does tell me why you're doing what you're doing, because that's the impression that's motivating you. And in this case, he laid it all out. He goes, I was worried. We needed to get a hold of him. We needed to subdue him. He had been running on multiple times through this. I was worried about his safety. I was worried about the safety of drivers. And then he's sharing with us. You know, I thought about different places where I can use the Taser. I knew I had to use the Taser. I couldn't use anything else. But I had to take him and stop him somewhere. I didn't want to do it in the middle of the road. I was worried about the side of the road. When he jumps over the barrier, he goes, okay, this is where I can use the Taser. And as he sees him move, he goes, oh, there's a grassy thing, knoll on the grassy incline on the other side, and he makes the decision. So I can't argue with the thought process that which he was going through.
Do you believe you would have reached the same conclusion without his testimony, or this just made it easier?
Well, for us, the basis that I always say, my conclusion, when I don't have testimonies, that does not absolve me or my office in wanting to share honestly with our community of citizens what happened. So we look upon all objective information and then make rational inferences from the thing that we do have, okay? And not speculative, not trying to get into the mind of the officer, because I don't, but I look at it objectively. And even objectively, his statements definitely help us a lot to contextualize, to corroborate. But even without his statement there, I think the question really becomes, why did he do that? And it would be a little bit more trickier because it helps me. But I understand he's using less lethal force. And I would always be open to saying, well, why did you decide at this moment? Why not at some other thing? So it causes a lot more challenge for us. but this really helps me understand it, and then I can corroborate it with the objective evidence. Anybody else? Thank you.